So you may be asking, okay, how do I make the arrows? And also, I already had a skeleton. Why would I want to make another skeleton? So let's do this. Let's hold down Shift and turn on this eyeball again, and we'll bring these muscles back. So let's do a kind of an Equerchet anatomy bust. Put it on our cam view, and then we'll add arrows. To make this a little bit easier, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down here underneath the Tool, Subtool menu. I'm going to go hold down Shift and open this menu. If you hold down Shift, it'll keep these menus open for you. I'm going to do a Merge Visible, and you can see nothing really changes in here. However, out in your Subtool palette, you can click on there, and now we have the Merge Subtool selected. So now all of our subtools are merged down into one thing. And just incidentally, if you ever have like an 8K texture loaded over here from Photogrammetry or something and your machine feels a little bit sluggish, it might just because this texture is visible. Just go click that texture and then say texture off. So now let's go ahead and make an Equerchet bust. So since all these things are merged together, I can go over here, I can hold down Control Shift. You can either do a slice or a trim. If you do a trim, it'll go ahead and fill holes for you. So we'll try that. Hold down Control Shift, click Trim. Let's turn on our polyframe so we can kind of see what we're working with here. And I'm just going to use the trim, and the gradient I want pointed downwards because that's going to delete everything below that line and then fill the hole on my object. So I'll go ahead and let go, and you're going to see this is the result we have. And if we turn on our polyframe, we can see we already have polygroups for, if we hold down Control Shift and we'll switch back to Select Rectangle, we can isolate the skeleton, we can isolate the muscles, and looks like there's a muscle in there that's supposed to be green, or that's green in there. Let's make this so that I can select every single thing on this face here. So I'm going to go down here to Polygroups, go to Auto Groups, and just because I want it mirrored across the X-axis, let's go over here to Geometry, Modify Topology, Mirror and Weld. Now if you don't like hunting around for things, what I like to do is make a custom menu with all the stuff I use a lot. If you want more information on that, just go to my YouTube channel. Go to the new intro for ZBrush, ZBrush for Ideation playlist that'll walk you through the basics. You can also grab that and a whole bunch of other stuff on my Gumroad and QBrush videos if you would rather download them. But the first section for that will take you through the real basics of ZBrush. So now you're going to see I have a poly group that's mirrored on both sides. And let's go ahead and hit X to go across the X-axis underneath my Transform menu. There's Activate Symmetry across the X-axis. So I can hold down Control Shift and I can isolate these little skin depth markers here, and you can Control Shift drag. So if you want to get rid of anything, like, you know, if you didn't want these markers on here for some reason, you can just hold down Control Shift and then try and touch the verts of these. Sometimes it's going to be a little bit difficult and you may grab something you don't want. Not a big deal. Just get as much as you can and then Control Shift drag, and then you can Control Shift tap the things you want to keep. Control Shift drag again to invert that, and then Geometry, Modify Topology, Delete Hidden. Now let's say you want different colors, you know, for your muscles or your skeleton and the eyes and stuff like that. So it's a little bit easier to differentiate between the anatomical parts. So that's easy enough to do. Again, since those are all different polygroups, we can just go through and start selecting the muscles. So Control Shift tap, Control Shift drag to invert, and then add these selections to your inverted selection. So let's go through here. And if you wanted to like separate the cartilage and the ligaments and stuff out on their own, you could do that. I'm just going to take everything but the skeleton essentially. And if it's any easier for you, sometimes what you can do, you know, the skeleton's kind of really in there, so it's a little bit difficult, but you can just grab a little piece of this, hold down Control Shift Alt, and grab just a little chunk, Control Shift drag, do Control Shift A, which is under your visibility menu, grow all, Control Shift drag, and then you can see you can just grab pieces like that as well. Okay, so we just basically have our eyeballs and our skeleton left. So what I'm going to do with all, if I Control Shift drag, you're going to see these are the pieces I have split off. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to say Split Hidden, and now these muscles are in their own subtool. I'm going to go back to the skeleton here, and we'll just pop these eyeballs out, Control Shift to isolate them, and then do another Split Hidden. So now we have three subtools. We have our muscles, we have our eyeballs. Go ahead and tap these eyeballs to turn the visibility on, and then we have our skeleton. So if I turn Polyframe off, right now I have my standard brush selected. I can turn on RGB, turn off Z-Add, and with our skeleton subtool selected, let's go ahead and choose like a skeleton-ish color. We'll go up here to Color, Fill Object, and that's going to fill the verts of that object. And then I'm going to go over here to the eyeballs, and we'll go ahead and choose White, Color, Fill Object, and then we'll choose the muscles, and we'll choose a reddish color, Fill Object. Now here's where it kind of gets a little bit tricky. If I turn on the floor, you're going to see, okay, yeah, it's right on my floor, but you're going to see down here is the real center, the 0, 0, 0 world axis of ZBrush. What you want is this entire object to be kind of centered on here. You could hit W and turn on Move Multiple, and then, with all these selected, you can Control Shift Drag over all of these subtools, and you can move them all, and you can center it yourself. And if you're not quite sure where that is, actually, I should probably talk about this. If you go over here to Draw, you're going to see your elevation set to -1. If you set that to 0, the floor is going to snap to the world axis. But by default, it's set to elevation set to -1. And that's because it puts a floor at the lowest point of the bounding box of your lowest subtool. So you can go in here to BPR. We move that light here. It'll be a shadow catcher. It'll cast a shadow on the ground right underneath your object. So that's the purpose of that, or one of the purposes of that. Go and turn our floor off. But now that we have this all set, let's do another merge visible. Now you're going to see our merge visible subtools here. I'm going to go ahead and select it. And if we turn our floor back on again, if I go over here to Deformation Unify, it's going to put this object's bounding box right at the world center, which is just where I want it. And the reason I'm doing that is because, well, I guess I can show you. I'm going to undo that, and it's not at world 0, 0, 0, and I'm going to leave my floor on as well. And I'm going to turn perspective on. Let's say you were working in perspective. So if I have it set up like this, and I go over here to Cam View, Make Cam View, and then we look at what it captured over here, you're going to see it's way off center. The object's hopping all around. The floor's visible. I have perspective turned on, which isn't terrible, but for orthographic views, it's probably not ideal. So there's a whole lot of problems with this. So number one, I'm going to turn perspective off so we get nice, clean orthographic views when we capture. I'm going to turn the floor off because I don't need to see the floor. And again, if I go to Deformation Unify, and now I do Cam View, Make Cam View, we get a much cleaner capture. You're going to see it's going to be centered right on there, and everything's working pretty good. And if you're really liking this, at this point you could go over here to your texture, make sure you go to Export, and then save it as, something specific. And I'm going to tell you that we still got a few problems I want to fix. Number one, it's a little bit dark. Even if I go in here and make this larger, it's kind of hard to tell what's going on. I want to change the material. Another thing that's going on, and it's kind of hard to tell because the background's the same. If I go over here to my document, and I change my background, so I'm going to click on back, and I'm just going to move around my object here. You're going to see as my background changes, oh, the cam view has a built-in color. So ideally, I'd have a nice transparency built into my objects, which I can totally do, and I don't have my arrows yet, but we'll talk about that. Let's go over here to texture, off again, and let's keep trying. For the transparency, it's actually pretty easy. If I go over here to document, back, and I choose a pitch black, I can go in here, I can choose a black, or I can just grab this one right here. Now I have a pure black background. So we'll go here to make cam view. Now you're going to see I have transparency because now if I go in here to my document, back, I have transparency. Now you're going to see, well, I can also see through the neck even though, I don't want this part to be transparent. The reason this part is transparent material selected. Now when we did color fill, we didn't do mRGB because that would have filled with the material. We just did RGB. So with that, I can actually go through here and change this to any sort of material that I want. But we'll stay with the startup material. I'll grab the material menu, let's drag it over here. We'll go into modifiers, and we can try doing like intensity A to kind of bring up this intensity, make it a little bit easier to see. And we'll go ahead and grab the render menu as well. Just click and drag this over here. If you go into BPR shadow, we've already turned off deep shadow. You can also go over here to render properties, and you can turn off shadows altogether. So if that's a little bit easier to see, you can definitely do that. Like I said before, you can change this to whatever material you'd like. So if you want to go down to, like, say, a basic material, this one's not a matte cap, so you have a few more options. If you crank up that ambient, you're going to see that also gets rid of a lot of your dark, so none of this is going to render as transparency because it has to be pure black in order to render as transparent. So you can play around with that ambient setting, and we've moved the light around. So if you go into your light menu and you kind of move this around, you can get a little bit of more neutral lighting. Let's go ahead and put this up upper left here. The diffuse we'll go ahead and crank up so we can see a little bit more of that. You can even go in here and make it a little more specular so you can see the volumes of your shapes a little bit better. If you go in here to specular curve, you can change the fall off of that. And if you want more information on kind of playing around with custom materials to get a really cool custom effect, you can go into my YouTube playlist and you can go to the ZBrush Guide Stylized Rendering playlist or the ZBrush 2019 What's New playlist, and this goes over a bunch of different render settings for like cell shaded rendering and ink rendering and stuff like that. If you want a little sneak preview of that, you can actually go over here to the mixer and you can say, you know what, I want to posterize this just to simplify, a little bit, or you can go in here and you just crank up an outline. This is all real-time stuff. You can also do it in the shader. So a lot of different ways to achieve an inky outline effect like that. And you know what, I kind of like that, so we'll go ahead and leave that. So we've updated this, looking a lot better. So I'm going to go over here to let's go ahead and close these menus out of here. And we'll go back to our preferences. Oops, I forgot. We have to make our background pure black. So I'm going to grab this, go to pure black, document, back, select the pure black, now make cam view. There we go. So now we have our, grab black, maybe a little dark gray. Now we have our transparent. It's not transparent through the neck anymore, and we can see our model much better. Now here, and we'll also go over here to render properties, and you can turn off shadows you'd like. So if you want to go down to, like, say, a base, also gets rid of a lot of your dark, and we've moved the light around. So if you want more info, to the ZBrush Guide, a bunch of different this just to simplify, a little bit, or you can go in here and you just crank up an outline. This is all real-time stuff. You can also do it in the shader. So a lot of different ways to achieve an inky outline effect like that. And you know what? I kind of like that, so we'll go ahead and leave that. So we've updated this, looking a lot better. So I'm going to go over here to let's go ahead and close these menus out of here. And we'll go back to our preferences. Oops, I forgot. We have to make our background pure black. So I'm going to grab this, go to pure black, document, back, select the pure black, now make cam view. There we go. So now we have our, grab black, maybe a little dark gray. Now we have our transparent. It's not transparent through the neck anymore, and we can see our model much better. So now the only thing we're missing is our arrows, and there's actually a couple different ways to do that. We'll do it the ZBrush way first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here to append, and you can append anything. You can use a cone, which is kind of an arrow shape. You can actually use an actual arrow, so we'll go ahead and append an arrow. If you wanted to, you can actually go to BI Brush Insert Body Parts, and you can hit M, or you can go up here and you can kind of scroll around. You can grab a hand, and if you want to like pose a hand and have it point, let's go ahead and select a white color here. You can split this off and have like fingers pointing in which direction you want. But for now, we'll just use an arrow. So we've appended an arrow here. So we'll go ahead and select that subtool here. And let's hit, it doesn't really matter, W, E, or R. We have the gizmo selected. Now we do have move multiple turned on. So let's go ahead and turn that off so we can just scoot this arrow around. So we'll go ahead and scale it down a little bit and move it over here. And we'll kind of match the other cam views that are built in with ZBrush. So if I want to make a down arrow, I can hold down Control and just pull an arrow out of here and then hold down Shift. And we'll go ahead and snap this to straight down while we're rotating in this view here. And then we'll just move this so we're down. And then again, Control, drag out a copy, and then hold down Shift and we'll rotate this. And we'll put that here, I suppose. Or you know what? Let's put it here and make sure we're snapped to the front here. I'm going to pull this out front. So now we get kind of a nice clean look here. So if I hold down Control and drag, that'll unmask all my objects. So now I've got 3 arrows kind of stacked on top of each other. Now what I want to do is I want to fill in these arrows with red, green, and blue. So when I go over here and click them, because again, it's clicking the pixels that are red and green and blue that's causing ZBrush to go, oh, you want the left view and the right view and the front view. So again, these can be any shape, they can be anywhere on the model, they can be in any location, but they do need to be pure red, green, and blue. If you need to know which direction they're pointing in, you can just click Next, and you'll see any view would be red, green, and blue. You can also go into Photoshop, and you can open up 2020 Z Startup Cam View, and we'll just open up Earthquake here, and you're going to see red's going to be your x-axis, Z is going to be your blue axis, and Y is going to be your green axis, which makes sense because, again, if we turn on our floor, you're going to know blue is Z forward, red is x-axis, green, and if you turn on your floor with X, Y, and Z turned on, you're going to see, again, green is Y, blue is Z, X is red. So a lot of different ways to remind yourself of what colors they should be. Now, I need to fill these with a color, so again, I'm going to have RGB selected, and I'm going to go over here to red. Now, I don't know that this is pure red. It's pretty red, but in order to make sure it's pure red, I'm going to take this color menu and just dock it over here, and now I have numerical values. So I'm going to take this, it says 225R, I'm going to make it 255, green, no blue. Now I know this is pure red, so now I need to fill in my x-axis arrow with red. So let's go ahead and go out of polyframe. Right now, it's just inheriting whatever color I have selected. If I go through here, since I haven't filled these verts with a color yet, it's just going to pick up whatever color I have. So again, 25500. And since these are all the same polygroup, I can't just Control-Shift-Click one. I can go down here to Polygroups, Auto Groups, and now they're all different polygroups, so I can isolate them like that. Or like we did before, Control-Shift-Drag a little piece of it, Control-Shift-A, and now you can just go over here to Color, Fill Object, turn off polyframe so you can see, and then Control-Shift-Tap, and you'll see this is filled with red. So we'll go ahead and grab pure blue, again 00255. We'll isolate this front one, our Z-axis, Color, Fill Object, and then finally this green one here, 00255, 0, isolate, fill, and there we go. And if I want to move this green arrow around, I can just I can hit W, I can Control tap the green arrow, and then that'll just mask just that polygroup there, and then Control drag to unmask everything. Now, I can't just capture this for 2 reasons. Number one, if I go over here to Preferences, Cam View, Make Cam View, you're going to see as I'm moving this around, the arrows are going all over the place, and I can kind of touch some of the blue parts and some of the green parts, but not all of it. You know, like the red and the blue just aren't working, and I can barely see it. So the reasons that's not working is I don't want these arrows to change. If I go to any of these cam views, you're going to see these arrows never change. They're always in the upper right-hand corner. They never change positions, and they're always pointing in the same direction. So I don't want to capture my arrows. Number two, it's not pure red, pure blue, and pure green. You're going to see these are all just one value. So if I go here and I click over my information, or you go to Window, turn on Info, and I just kind of go over these, you're going to see this is, well, it's 25400, but pretty dang close. But you can see these are all pure green, pure blue, and pure red. So we need to do the same thing in ZBrush. Now we filled the verts with those colors, but since it's picking up shading information, it's knocking those values off. So how do I fix that? If I go to my basic material and I choose a flat color, now I'm getting just the pure pixel values of my arrows. But I've also lost the shading information on my musculature, which is what I don't want because I haven't filled in the materials on these verts yet. So I'm going to go ahead and select my body. I'm going to go to my material. I'm going to go back to that basic material we were using. I'm going to choose M and then go to Color, fill object, and now my material's filled. So when I go back to these arrows and I choose a flat color, these will stay the same, and now I've got a flat color for my arrows. Now, again, I don't want these arrows to be captured with my object. And I kind of want them positioned within the bounding box of my overall object. You'll notice a lot of the other subtools, it just keeps things nice and consistent. So here's the cool thing. Because we did a unify on my object, if I go over here to append a cube, let's go ahead and choose a white color again, and we'll turn on transparency, and we'll turn off ghost, and we'll select our head here. You're going to see our head fits perfectly within this bounding box, because unify, essentially what that does is take your object and fit its bounding box perfectly within a ZBrush cube. So if I want, I can take my arrows here, and I'm going to hold down Alt. I'm going to reset this this move, so I can like move these like here. I can just grab the camera move. I can move them within the bounding box here. I'll go ahead and turn that off. And let's go to Unmask Mesh Center. I'm going to scale this down a little bit. We'll keep that cube turned on. So it's up in the corner, but it's not really interfering too much with my my body here. All right, so I'm going to hit Q to go back into draw mode. So now, and we'll turn off transparent. So now I have my arrow sitting here and my head sitting here. Now I want to capture my head, but I don't want to capture the 3D model of the arrow. So how I'm going to do that is I'm going to turn off everything but my arrows. I'm going to hit Shift S, and that's going to save a snapshot. In fact, if I move this around and I do Shift S, you can just capture snapshots of your model all over. In fact, if you have everything showing and you do Shift S, it's going to capture snapshots all over the place. It's actually good for reference too. If you ever want to have on your canvas some reference of an object, you can just do Shift S all around. Actually, just hit Control End, and let's say, okay, I want this here, and I want a side view, and I want a 3/4 view, and then I want to take my sphere, and we'll go back to say basic material or startup material, and we can go through here. We can kind of just start. Let's go back to Z-Add, and now I can start sculpting with that reference up there on my canvas. But anyway, we'll go back to our view here. We'll hit Control N to clear our canvas. And we'll go back to our flat color so our arrows are correct. And again, just with the arrows showing, we're going to do Shift S to snapshot that to our canvas. If you want to turn this eyeball off, you can turn the eyeball off. You can also just, if it's on, you can touch the nameplate, that'll turn it off. And now we can just select our model here. So with this snapshot to our canvas and our model visible, we can go over here and we can say, Make Cam View. And now it's going to capture these arrows with my object here. So I can hit Control N to clear my canvas. And now as I rotate this around, you're going to see my cam view now has arrows, and I can go through here, and now it's pure red, pure blue, and pure green. Everything's working great. In fact, I can go over here. I can say Export. We can make another new one. Maybe a crochet bust with arrows. Oops, we've got one thing. Document, background, pure black. Shift S, Cam View, Make Cam View, Control N to clear our canvas. Now we can go in here and we can say Export a crochet bust with arrows. So now let's talk about that thumbnail view over here. If you're doing done, judging, and I'm just going to go to Load Tool, or off. And so I'll just invisible thumbnail. Now you're going to see, touch this colorize. Suppose if you wanted, you can have gray. Grab a in here that we have loaded, so you can actually have an image in the background. Let's talk about the history recall brush. In order to project here with the demo anime head, go Load Tools from Project Z Project. Oh, just an alternative. Edit mode. This history bar up here is pretty important. So if you go in here to, and let's go ahead and start kind of cutting in a little bit here, maybe change to the move brush. And I'm using hotkeys for that. You can store a hotkey on any brush by holding down Control Alt, or go to my YouTube channel and look at the, just search for basics. So through here, again, using that Damien Standard brush, and then maybe switching over to the clay brush and the standard brush, we can start detailing this head out a little bit. So So you got kind of a head sculpt going on here, and let's go ahead and make some fairly drastic changes. Let's go in here and we'll just age it up considerably. So again, go in with our Damien Standard brush, and we'll go through, and we'll start adding some wrinkles. And let's say you're looking at this and you're like, you know what? I don't mind the wrinkles in the forehead and the mouth here, but around the eyes, I really want to kind of start over a little bit. So instead of going through here and like just randomly smoothing out this or going back through your undo history, you can just click and drag. And if I go all the way back to where my eyes are done, I've lost all the wrinkle detail I've done in my other areas. So in this case, I just want to get rid of this wrinkle detail and leave my other wrinkle detail. So what I can do is I can go back through my history to where, again, all of my eye wrinkles are gone. I can control tap in there. You're going to see it's going to turn white. And then if I click and drag all the way up through my undo history here, now I'm back where I started, but I have a little light gray undo marker in there. So what I can do now is I can go to BHR, that's my history recall brush, and it's going to look at the object or the volume stored in memory, and it's going to allow you to project that back. So if I go through here, first of all, you need to turn off X symmetry. And I'll show you why in a bit. But now you can go through here and you can just go through and scrub out this information. Now because we're working on kind of a Dynamesh object here, I can do a geometry, modify topology. If I do a mirror and weld now, it's going to mirror from the negative X to the positive X side. So first I need to go here to deformation, mirror across the X, and then preferences, undo history. You're going to see there's an undo selector. Make sure that's showing. And let's start making some changes to this face. I'm going to go into the Damien Standard brush, so BDS, and we can go ahead and start kind of cutting in a little bit here, maybe change to the move brush. And I'm using hotkeys for that. You can store a hotkey on any brush by holding down Control-Alt, or go to my YouTube channel and look at the, just search for basics. So through here, again, using that Damien Standard brush, and then maybe switching over to the clay brush and the standard brush, we can start detailing this head out a little bit. So you got kind of a head sculpt going on here, and let's go ahead and make some fairly drastic changes. Let's go in here and we'll just age it up considerably. So again, go in with our Damien Standard brush, and we'll go through, and we'll start adding some wrinkles. And let's say you're looking at this and you're like, you know what? I don't mind the wrinkles in the forehead and the mouth here, but around the eyes, I really want to kind of start over a little bit. So instead of going through here and like just randomly smoothing out this or going back through your undo history, you can just click and drag. And if I go all the way back to where my eyes are done, I've lost all the wrinkle detail I've done in my other areas. So in this case, I just want to get rid of this wrinkle detail and leave my other wrinkle detail. So what I can do is I can go back through my history to where, again, all of my eye wrinkles are gone. I can control tap in there. You're going to see it's going to turn white. And then if I click and drag all the way up through my undo history here, now I'm back where I started, but I have a little light gray undo marker in there. So what I can do now is I can go to BHR, that's my history recall brush, and it's going to look at the object or the volume stored in memory, and it's going to allow you to project that back. So if I go through here, first of all, you need to turn off X symmetry. And I'll show you why in a bit. But now you can go through here and you can just go through and scrub out this information. Now because we're working on kind of a Dynamesh object here, I can do scrub out, check that back. BHR, that's my history recall brush, and it's going to look at the object or the volume stored in memory, and it's going to allow you to project that back. So if I go through here, first of all, you need to turn off X symmetry. And I'll show you why in a bit. But now you can go through here and you can just go through and scrub out this information. Now because we're working on kind of a Dynamesh object here, I can do a geometry, modify topology. If I do a mirror and weld now, it's going to mirror from the negative X to the positive X side. So first I need to go here to deformation, mirror across the X, and then mirror and weld across the X. If that seems like a bit much for you to have to dig through these windows. That's why I do my own custom menu here. So if you look at my YouTube channel, ZBrush for Ideation playlist, it'll show you how to do a custom menu. So you can do mirror and weld right next to each other. And there we go. So now we have history recall going back from a previous version of our history and just projecting that back. Here's another cool thing you can do. So let's say we like this, but we want to go ahead and we remember if you had polyframe turned on, we have this very Dynamesh resolution. If we go in here to geometry, Dynamesh, you see Dynamesh is turned on. So if I control drag in my view here, I can just re-Dynamesh my object, and this is the resulting mesh I have. Let's go ahead and turn on X symmetry again. Just tap X. I'm sorry, I actually didn't say that earlier. Activate symmetry under transform. Just tap X to turn X symmetry off. So let's say we want to clean up this geometry, but I still want my detail back. So another thing you can do is you can go down to the ZRemesher. I'm going to turn the adaptive size down a little bit because I want my I want kind of nice even quads. The higher this is, the more it's going to kind of build in edge changes. Going to change my geometry a little bit. So I want a pretty nice even quads. So I'm going to keep this at a lower number. I have X symmetry turned on, so it's automatically going to be symmetrical. And for our target polygon count, let's go ahead and leave that at 5, and I'll hit ZRemesh. And there you go. We got some new geometry on here. If you want to make this even lower, you can say half, and then you can hold down Alt. I want to project my to go in a subtool. You duplicate. All you have to do is just go back through your history to where your details are. And you know, if we want to capture all that eye detail back, we can do that as well. We can hold down Control and tap, and then go all the way back to where you ZRemeshed. And if you use your history recall brush now, I'm actually going to say there's another method to do this, but go ahead and turn off X so you can use your history recall brush. If you use it now, you'll see it'll start grabbing a little bit of that detail, but you don't really have enough resolution on your mesh to do anything. So we hit Control D a couple times and then go back in with your history recall brush. Control D, by the way, is geometry subdivide, so you can just hit this divide button a couple times. Now you have enough resolution to go ahead and grab that detail. If we undo that, and now we're back, we're just one subdivision level. You can also go up here to your Sculptris Pro and turn that on. And then if you remember from my ZBrush 2018 What's New playlist, you learned all about Sculptris Pro. So based on your brush size, you can go through here, and as you start sculpting, it's going to automatically tessellate the geometry to give you more detail where you need it. So you can just go out of polyframe mode. So again, you can capture all that detail, and if you want to capture even more detail, let's say the original mesh was even higher res, just make your brush size smaller, and it'll capture even more of that detail. Now let's say, you know what, I don't want to use a history recall brush and then have to mirror and weld it. I like this nice geometry. I want to UV it, and I want to animate with it or whatever. So that's where I would go in here, and I would use the history project settings in subtool project. We still have in our history, we control tapped all the detail, and I just want to project that detail to this mesh. In fact, let's undo back to where we just had our ZRemesh. There we go. So this is our brand new ZRemesh. We have X symmetry turned on, and we have in our history marked that detail area. So if I go over here to subtool project, you're going to see we have project all, but it's grayed out because we don't have another subtool to project to. If we went over here to append and grabbed any other object, you would see now that we have two visible subtools, project all is going to be allowed to be used. Of course, we don't want to project this cylinder door ahead, so we'll just go ahead and delete that. But we do have project history available to us. In fact, we also have geometry and color. If we had poly painted in our history, we could actually project that color, but in this case, we're just going to be projecting geometry. So if we go over here to project history, it's going to look at the place we have marked, and it's going to project details from our history. So if we hit Control D, which is again going to subdivide our mesh, geometry divide, and then project history, it's just going to keep projecting back to what we have saved. Control D, project history. So again, it's looking at what we have in memory and then projecting that detail from that object to our current state, which is a ZRemeshed object. So now I have subdivision level history and detail projected back onto it. Now, it's called the history recall brush, but it can project from any point of history from any subtool to any other subtool. It's actually really, really powerful. For example, if we take this head and we just clone it off, so now we have two versions of our head. And just to make this a little bit more obvious, we have head over here, and for head 1, I'm going to rename this to head crazy, and let's just go nuts on this thing. So again, just using our brushes, our Damien Standard, our standard brush, our clay brush. I'm going to go ahead and turn off Sculptris Pro while we're working. I'm just going to go ahead and make some fairly severe modifications to this thing. So we got a little bit of a Mr. Mxyzptlk thing going on here. So we have this head right here, and in fact for this head, we can revert back to our original anime head. And how I'm going to do this, I'm going to go with the head crazy. I'm going to go all the way back to, you know what, let's just go back to where, he was just kind of soft. I'm going to hold down Control and tap. That's going to remark this history. I can go back to this head, go back here, and we have subdivision history, but because I have Dynamesh still on, I can Control Drag and get rid of that. And it'll just re-Dynamesh my geometry. And then again, back up under here, I can go to Project History, and it's going to project from the history on this completely other subtool. Now, it kind of missed a little bit of this here, so we can actually go to BHR to History Recall Brush, and we can just use a History Recall. If I do turn off X, I can use a History Recall Brush to just kind of do a little bit of cleanup work. Turn X back on. So now again,